The views expressed on this podcast are our own and do not constitute endorsement by the Department of War, the Department of the Air Force, or the U.S. government. Bring us her triumphs, her challenges, her legacy. Bring Us Women, a podcast brought to you by Isabella Horning and Allie Mascher. Hey Bring Us Women Squad, today's episode is a little different. We're bringing you a mini episode where we focus on one topic. Today we have the one and only Allie Mascher. She's a USAFA Class of 2024 and one of the newest survivors of IPT, UPT, and the chaos of Air Force pilot training.
We'll be debriefing the good, the hard, and the things no one really explains until you're already in it. Because let's be honest, pilot training is not for the faint of heart. If you've ever wondered what Air Force pilot training is actually like, this one's for you. Hey, Allie, welcome.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And just for a little background to all of our listeners, Allie was one of my closest friends at the academy. Issa was actually the one that told both of us while we were going there that if we met each other, she thought that we would really hit it off. And we just thought that she was saying that because we have the same name. But turns out we are very, very similar, and we've enjoyed traveling all over the world together. And yeah, so we're excited to have her on today.
Cool. Allie, we'll just hop right in and get started. So what originally brought you to the Air Force Academy?
Okay, so yeah, growing up, I'm from Prescott, Arizona. So it's like a little pilot community in northern Arizona. And I had a lot of mentors there that were pilots, veterans. And so flying was on my radar and service was on my radar. And so I ended up going to Northern Arizona University for a year and was kind of just like walking around like the club fair event that they throw to get people interested in clubs. And I saw Air Force ROTC. And so I actually just kind of on a whim signed up for ROTC, did that for a year. And after a year talking to my commanders, they were like, hey, you have like the grades, the aptitude, you should apply to the Air Force Academy. And I thought, okay, I'll give that a shot. And so that's how I ended up there. So luckily I had kind of that experience of both ROTC and going to the academy.
That's awesome. We also love people who are on the 5-year plan, since Allie and I were the same in the same boat.
So was pilot kind of always the goal then? I know that you kind of grew up flying with your dad sometimes. So was that pilot or bust?
Yeah, to some degree, I would say so. I did grow up enjoying flying, but I think just even at my time at the academy, I recognized that I was somebody that loved to have some variety in my day-to-day life. And I figured that kind of flying the desk, so to speak, would have maybe not been for me. And I didn't want to get too caught up in like a routine life. And so it just sold the pilot life even more to me through my time at the academy.
Well, nice. Love that.
Yeah, I'm really good at flying a desk, but I'm glad you don't have to do that.
No offense, guys. Sorry.
Well, getting into IPT, or what is called initial pilot training, can you break down what that is and how it differs from the old IFT or initial flight training?
Yeah, so that's actually another thing that I got kind of the best of both worlds on. So I was actually at IFT, initial flight training, when they kind of made this switch over to IPT. So they were like, hey, just finish out IFT. So I got to do both. So that was super awesome. I can speak on that a little bit. But really the difference is that the old program, IFT, essentially led into UPT, or what was the traditional UPT syllabus. And IFT was this short little like intro to fundamentals of flight, just something kind of short, but lots of academics just to get you kind of acquainted with flying a small DA-20. And then it led into traditional UPT, which was flying the T6 for a much longer time. And this new program, IPT, is where they sent us all to different civilian flight schools around the country for a decent amount of time to get our private pilot's license, our instrument ratings, as well as our multi-engine ratings. And then that now feeds into a shorter FUPT syllabus, future undergraduate pilot training, which is only about 39 rides or about like 55 hours. So got to experience both. And I ended up going to IPT in Denton, Texas.
How long was the training there? And kind of going through that crazy roller coaster of a journey, switching from IFT to IP, what surprised you the most about IPT once you arrived?
Okay, so I guess what surprised me, this will kind of answer that question as a whole, but something I didn't really realize going into IPT was because we are getting all sent to these various civilian flight schools around the country. I didn't realize how like different of an experience we were all going to have because this is no longer under, Air Force oversight. And so I showed up there and it was supposed to be, I want to say about a 5-month program, but the reason I don't even remember is because of how fast like I went through the program. My group went through the program. So over at like Mesa in Phoenix, their program probably took that whole 5 months, whereas I went to Denton, Texas, and I did my private pilot's license in 3 weeks, my instrument rating in about 4 weeks, and my multi-engine rating in 2 weeks, and immediately got sent back. So that, for reference, is like a very quick timeline considering half of the other civilian students they were doing like their private pilot's license in 8 months, and there I was doing it in 3 weeks. So I
Wow.
would say so that's my
Super high
timeline.
speed, super high speed.
Yes, very. It was extremely, extremely fast. And it's going to be different, for anybody listening, it's going to be different depending on where you go, but relatively the same in terms of you're still getting those same 3 ratings.
That sounds definitely intense. Walk us through what a typical day looked like for you, like lights
Yeah.
up to lights out.
It's funny because, leaving the Air Force Academy, I was so used to that military oversight and kind of just having a very certain schedule every day. But being back in like the civilian world for a little bit changed things a lot just because we got to get back into that mindset of being able to kind of control your training, control like your time management a lot more. Took the FAA writtens, and then it was kind of just like you're scheduled once or twice a day at a random time. Like half the time I was scheduled to fly at 2 a.m. And so it was,
Wow.
yeah, totally crazy, totally different than military. It's just, the military rules weren't there. So we just did whatever the civilian instructors had us do. But it was a lot different because I had time to kind of like wake up, work out, meal prep, do the things that I needed to do, show up to fly. So the way that it was interesting was just, I don't think all of us folks in the military are kind of like used to having that much freedom with our time on a day-to-day basis and being able to like manage our own schedules. But I would just, go to the gym, have a meal, study. I did study a lot just because of how fast paced the program was for me. Obviously, like there was days that I didn't get to work out because of just how much I needed to learn in that short 3 weeks for my PPL, for example. And I would just show up to fly, do a little debrief and go home and study more. But definitely was enjoying life a decent amount over in Denton, Texas, a good time. And I learned a lot.
Wow, that's
Well,
kind of crazy. And I mean, I heard you mention flying, but you talked a lot about studying and a lot about academics and all of that. So, how much of IPT is actually flying versus what sounds like
Mm.
you studying and doing admin and lots of things like that?
Yeah, so that is definitely another interesting thing is kind of the group I went with. A lot of the people already knowing they wanted to be pilots in the Air Force already came with their private pilot's license. Some came with their instrument ratings, and personally, I did not have any of my ratings. So it was so different for each of us there and will be in the future if you know anybody that goes. But it's kind of just in that moment, like how much of your time that you want to dedicate to that stuff. And for me, coming with like not a lot of official flight training, I was definitely in the books. But what I've learned about being a pilot, and like I think what any experienced pilot will say, is when you're a pilot, you're also a lawyer, a meteorologist, an athlete. And I completely agree with all of those things because there are just so many rules to flying that you would never think of. And you want to be like a lifelong learner in that sense. And you could literally spend 12 hours of your day studying for years and not know everything there is to know about being a pilot. So personally, I spent a lot of time in the books studying, yeah, it's like a 1 hour flight, but it's a textbooks and textbooks of knowledge to know. So I definitely was spending a lot of time studying.
yeah, I remember because Harold, my husband, also went through the whole pilot training program and him get preparing for those check rides and also memorizing what is that list that you have to memorize at the very beginning? It's
Wait,
something like your engine checks, like when you get in, you have to do all this kind of
those are like
yeah.
emergency procedures. Like if stuff goes wrong, you need to be able to like do boom, 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 like off the top of your head without even thinking about it for certain emergencies.
Yeah, he would recite it to me, and I swear that he was repeating boldface for like 20 minutes of just memorized knowledge.
Yeah.
And that was the craziest thing to me.
Yeah,
But
definitely. And with every new plane, there's a new set of bold-faced and obs limits that you better know off the top of your head right away.
that's intense. What do you think was the hardest adjustment that you had, like physically, mentally, or emotionally?
I would say flying has its own sort of mental challenge about it. Because if you had the opportunity to be there, then you definitely deserve to be there. But I think a lot of us would struggle with things like imposter syndrome and that sort of thing where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm flying, even the T6s, I'm flying a multi-million-dollar aircraft. And it's like, how are they letting me do this? You know? And I think the mental battles sometimes the hardest because when you're just having 18-hour days sometimes with studying and flying, and it's trying to keep up your confidence, but you're new to this, you're making mistakes in the aircraft. It's like you want to be humble, but you also need to like either fake it till you make it or like really back yourself up with that confidence. It's so important.
I mean, just to think about how much money each of those aircraft that you're entrusted, it's like, I don't know, even like my classmates now are getting like the F-22 or like various planes. And it's like, you are 26 years old, you're flying this $100 million aircraft, and it's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's insane.
I think it's something that people also don't realize, or maybe they do, but it's that you're constantly being evaluated. Like everything you do, it's the first time that you've ever done it. And there, like, there's some room for mistakes, but at the same time, it's like if you make a mistake up there, you're going to really pay for that one. How did you kind of handle that pressure?
And you know what? I would like to speak on that because I think, we are kind of like this guinea pig little era of people doing IP for the first time. So there are plenty of critiques on it. And there's, of course, lots of tweaking they're going to do, I'm sure, based off of the feedback that they do receive. However, I would advocate for IPT. There was one thing that I did love about it, and it is that, in the military, we're so used to like following that, we're kind of being held to the grade book constantly. And being at a civilian flight school, we weren't getting ranked. Our daily rides were not being graded. And there was just something about that I thought was so freeing as a student because you could just look at your instructor and say, hey, I straight up do not understand this. Can we just spend some time on it? And they're like, yeah, of course. And that is not something that I would probably do in a military-based training. I would kind of not want to admit where I lack, general knowledge or have like some insecurities about what I don't know. And I did love that about going to a civilian school is just that freedom to like confess that you don't know something and get help.
I feel like that's really good feedback. I hope that they would kind of maybe incorporate that a little bit more into the UPT programs.
Yeah, no, for sure. I thought, especially for some, like for me, I've always like done a little bit better in a more laid back learning environment. And it's going to be different for different people. But for me, I thought IPT was a really great opportunity to just talk to someone like they're human. I mean, I was 24 years old going through IPT. I'm pretty sure my instructor was 21. So the relationship there is a little bit different than flying with like a major in the military. You know what I'm saying?
Well, kind of transitioning into UPT, how prepared did you feel after you went through this new IPT program to then move on into UPT?
Yeah, it took me probably a couple hours into my first day UPT where I was like, oh, dang, okay, this is going to be different for sure. And, part of that is that it's a military training environment. So all that bearing needs to come back and you show up like at attention every morning for formal briefs and just be really locked in. And even in the plane, that like military decorum and bearing still needs to hold true. But other than that, even I don't even think a ton of people realize this unless they are kind of in the pilot world. But the civilian flight world and the military flight world have completely different rules. So that is what I would say was one drawback to this new program is that we spend, months at IPT learning everything there is to know about FAA civilian flying. And then we show up to the Air Force and they're like, hey, by the way, all the rules are completely different. And you're like, oh, dang, okay. So I'm a little bit behind in my knowledge of these new rules. For an example, there's certain like weather minimums you can fly approaches to an airport at in the civilian world, completely different in the military world. And just based off of, psychological like priming. When they ask us a question, our minds immediately dart to that first thing we learned, but it's wrong to us now because it's a civilian rule. And I would say that was probably the hardest transition, was just trying to almost like release a lot of what we learned and take in the new Air Force stuff. And I think it's a little bit of a battle. Like, we're still all just trying to get caught up in all of that. So, but it's been a good time. And I think it just taught us a lot about kind of being flexible in our education and be ready to pivot to something new.
I have heard that flexibility is the key to air power.
I've heard that one too.
Well, kind of making that transition, is there one thing or anything that you wish you had known before starting UPT?
I wish I had known the extent to which the rules differed. You know what I'm saying? I thought it was going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, like just a couple of things. Like, no, a lot of things are different. And I wish, like, my advice to incoming pilots now would be, if you're probably going to have some time in between like IPT and UPT, and link up with somebody who is in the new FUPT syllabus and just get the textbooks from them, get some advice on like what documents to dive into, study the pattern, like everything like that. I wish I spent a little bit more of that free time kind of organizing myself to prepare for what was to come in UPT, just kind of even organizing my mindset to be like, hey, this is all going to be new.
Yeah, understandable.
But even though you had like IPT so different because it's civilian, you're moving into military, all new rules, all new everything. Is it at all like beneficial down the road for you to know both things, even though like outside of the UPT realm that now you do know the rules of both realms?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, a decent amount of people who go and be a pilot in the Air Force, they ideally will join to serve and do their 20 years if they can. But I know a lot of people are going to want to go airlines afterward. And I think it's going to be a huge benefit way down the line, maybe in 20 years for me, if I decide to go airlines after retiring or something. I will have been acquainted with these FAA rules and get some exposure to the civilian world. And of course, there's going to be like some crossover because you are, as an Air Force pilot, still going to like civilian airfields and things like that. So I do think it'll be, still hugely beneficial to know a lot of those same rules.
That's a lot of things to memorize. I'm just trying to imagine, like, when you're flying, at least I think for you probably scheduled like your fuel, where you were going to pick that up at, what like your timelines for certain things, like we're going to touch down at this base. I can't even imagine like putting that all together logistically. Like sometimes I'm like, I don't even know what I'm going to eat for lunch today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where, as much as the rules are different, IPT was still prepared us for UPT, as we still did those things. Like, we still flew and we still mission plan. Like, we got the big chunk of like what we needed about aviation from IPT. I think it's a great program. There's just different, like, when they talk about pilots need to be lawyers, you know what I'm saying? It's like, that's where the rules are different, but the flying fundamentals that we drew were still the same.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, now that you kind of are in, so you moved out of IPT, you're on to UPT. Walk us through how your day-to-day kind of changed then.
Okay, yeah. So obviously UPT, now being under some military oversight, was a lot more structured. It went from, hey guys, do you want to like go grab dinner together on Wednesday night in IPT, to like nobody even texts after we get released. But essentially what the day-to-day looks like is everybody goes into pilot training with something called formal release, which is essentially a 12-hour period that like you're gonna be in the flight room or flying. And so every day it's like determined the day before. There was days where I was waking up at 3:30, getting there at like, let's say 4 a.m. That means I'm going to be there till 4 p.m. Some days it would show up at 6 a.m. Okay, then I'm going to be there till 6 p.m. And so you always knew every day that you're going to be there for 12 hours. And that was just a given. So a lot of the times it was just wake up at 3:30 in the morning, eat your breakfast, go into work, and then every day is going to start with like a formal brief. So you're at attention and somebody's briefing weather, emergency procedures, just kind of like the stuff for that day, right? Like what's relevant to us as pilots for that day. And then everybody's either hopping into a brief or a flight, a simulator, or just getting in the textbooks, because truly in UPT, like time was of the essence. I couldn't imagine even taking like 15 minutes out of my day to like do something I needed to do just because of like how much there was to know. And in this shortened syllabus now, it's a time crunch again where it's like you need to know everything a lot faster now too. So it was just sitting at that desk studying, then you're going for a brief, then you're going for 1 or 2 flights a day, and then probably spend the rest of the day chair flying with your wingmen. Especially once we got into like formation flying, you definitely wanted to sit there and chair fly with whoever you were going to be on their wingtip next. So that was a big one. And then I would literally just go home, eat what I had meal prepped, study until I fell asleep, and do it again the next day. And that was how it was for like the probably like 3 months I was on the flight line.
Wow, I'm already tired listening to all of that. So I can't even imagine going through it every single day for all those months. But how did you manage, if at all, studying and flying with also things for you like fitness or just being a human, having fun, all of that?
Right. So I would say that some of the more like experienced people that were there, because there was a ton of people in my class that had like 10 years experience. We had a Wizzo who was already, like a backseater in an F-15. We had people that came with all their ratings already. So they had a lot of experience. I would say for them, those were the people that like maybe would fit an hour in the gym into their day. For me, I'm a big like gym rat, but I definitely had to like sit down with myself and say, okay, I'm not as experienced as some people, so I'm obviously going to have to make a sacrifice here. This is my dream. And if maybe not getting to exercise every single day for the next 3 months is going to like propel me towards that dream and towards that plane I want to fly, then like I'm just going to have to make that sacrifice. And that really is not like speaking for everybody. I'm just someone who like, in order to feel prepared, needs to know that I spent like all the time I had preparing and studying and everything like that. So it's going to be different for everybody. But in terms of just like some free time, maybe on like a Friday night, that's kind of when we got together as like our flight would go out to like dinner. And that was kind of like our free time for the week, and maybe spend some time on Saturday. Like people would just do whatever they needed to do spiritually and do like your meal prep on Saturday, maybe hit the gym. And then Sundays, like back to the books, preparing for Monday.
Well, even though it's kind of like an individual journey, like you said, like lots of hours of you just like hitting the books or studying, it also sounds like, your classmates are kind of there helping you get through the training. So, how important was it that you had that like type group of other pilots that were going through this same suck with you?
Oh yeah. So going into UPT from IPT, where we weren't getting ranked at IPT, now that I knew we were about to get like ranked and everything, I was a little scared. I was like, oh my gosh, is everybody gonna kind of be like hiding gouge from each other? Like just kind of like what I thought was gonna happen from like going to a place like the academy where there is some like, competition going on in terms of that sort of thing. But I literally could not have been more wrong. Like when they say teamwork make the dream work, they were not kidding, because I literally I was just blown away by how much of a like little family this became and a team this became, and how much everybody helped each other. And like literally, I do not think we could have done that without each other. It was insane. I still remember it was like my first week. I was like on edge, like, oh my gosh, are we like hiding stuff because we're like being ranked? Like, I don't really care about that stuff, but do other people because they want to go fighters or something? And I remember there was one of my buddies in my flight who wants fighters. I got thrown into like a last second simulator that I absolutely was not prepared for. And I was totally freaking out because I was walking into a debrief and then I was just going to double turn straight into that simulator. And he heard that I got scheduled, and I was just panicking in this debrief, knowing I was about to go just flop on this sim because of how unprepared I was. And so I get out and I run back to the flight room, and he's like, Allie, here's like your mission data card to give to your instructor. Here's a little synopsis of the key points on the reading they're going to ask you about in the brief. And he had like totally prepared everything for me. And I went into sim and did a good job. And I was like, wow. And I knew that kid wanted fighters and everything. And like, that was the first moment where I was just like, it's a very heartwarming moment where I was like, okay, like this is how this is going to go. Like we're going to be a little family here. And it totally went that way the whole time. Even on days where I was so exhausted and just felt like I had nothing more to give, it came so much easier to, if somebody else needed help, like that felt like nothing. That was like, yeah, like, let me help you. Like, that's what I have to give right now. And I'm going to give it to you because like, this is our little family. But yeah.
I think that's so cool. And actually, I was just reflecting on that this past weekend with my roommates from tech school about how, it's so easy to wish away like tech school or pilot training, being like, these are the grind days, the days where we're learning stuff that we have no idea what we're even talking about, and it kind of ready to like move on to like, oh, I just want to get into the operational Air Force. I just want to have my own place, do my own thing. But no one talks about how good those days really are, like how tight you are with your friends. Just last week, I was needing information for this mission that we were flying, and I hit up like four of my Intel buddies, and they all helped me put together this brief. And it's just amazing moments like that where it's like, dang, I really miss these people. And although those are like the grind days, the people and the connections that you make in your respective training is just like I don't think that you'll ever find friends like that.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, I was just mind blown. And even now that I've finished training recently, I literally just got back from a trip with those same people this weekend. And it's just like so beautiful to see us go through like such a hard time together. And now we can just like enjoy each other's company to the fullest and just like hang out and be friends outside of a training environment. It's just like so awesome to see that this like little family we've developed can continue on into the real
Yeah.
world.
Speaking of which, don't you guys have a group trip planned to somewhere really cool coming up soon?
Yeah, we're going to Japan.
That's awesome.
That's super exciting.
Hey, that's the treat yourself that we're looking for. When they said treat yourself, that's what they meant. Take
Yeah,
yourself to Japan, sweetie.
It's our little, end of UPT gift to ourselves. A couple of us are going to go. I'm excited. I know you're about to go too. So I got to go scope it out for you.
Yeah, I need all the intel on the ground. Let me know how it is.
I will.
Well, we do know that UPT was really tough. You've told us about it, how much of a grind it was. And as much as we would love that every single thing went perfectly, every ride was amazing, you did wonderfully all the time, we know things happened. So can you tell us a little bit about how you dealt with maybe bad rides or tough rides or receiving tough feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's think about it. So I guess, so I hooked or I failed. Another word for fail is hooking a ride. So I might accidentally say that. So I'll just say that now. That means failed. But essentially, I think, there's probably a couple times there where I could have hooked a ride, but I didn't because I just got thrown a bone. So shout out to those instructors. But the first time I hooked one was once I started formation flying. I had a bad
Ooh.
flight. I had a little mess up moment and I hooked the ride. And I remember throughout, training thinking, oh my gosh, the first time I hook a ride, I'm just going to be so down in the dumps. But I think I was genuinely just like so busy just trying to get my flights done and beat the weather and beat the timeline. I wanted to graduate on time that I don't even know if I had time to think about it other than just like, a debrief with myself on how not to make that mistake again. It was kind of just like, all right, get me in a plane so I can clean this up and keep moving forward just because of how busy it was. And when it comes to feedback, I think it's honestly, I think some people go into the program thinking like, ouch, I'm not going to be good at this. Like, I don't want someone to tell me I suck all day. But once you get up in the plane, and especially like after you solo it for the first time, it's kind of like, no, like, tell me everything I do wrong, please. I'm literally like, it's like squeezing a lemon. I'm like, please, like, if there's anything you don't remember that I did wrong, like, if you remember it, call me. Just because, like, you want to know so bad, like, everything, like, every way that you could be better, you want to know because you're starting to realize, like, okay, I'm like deep in my training, like, this is serious. And like, I want to be a good pilot. I want to, serve the country in a good way. I want to complete the mission well. And so, you want to be a good pilot. And so every feedback you get, it really does not feel like a personal dig, especially in my opinion. I really don't know a lot of people that took stuff very poorly because it was just like, yeah, like, let me have it. Let me know how to be a better pilot. Seriously.
I also just think that speaks so much to your personality too, that like you're a go-getter. And I think for a lot of people, it'd be easy to take that feedback really harshly, but you're just like, I just want to be better. And
Yeah.
actually, for some background too, Allie is so much that way that when they were going into their next phase where they, kind of put in their preferences for what planes they want, Allie called me up on the phone because she was freaking out that they were going to FAPE her. Because, and then for some background too, you only FAPE if you are damn good at your job. If you know your shit, you know that plane inside and out, and you know how to fly that, and also how to instruct others and make them better. So when she told me that they were considering her for that, I was like, well, that makes perfect sense to me. Like, you're a nerd, you love this, you live for it, and you always want to get better and make everybody around you better. So that made perfect sense to me. But I know that ultimately you decided that there was another plan for you and you wanted to track select something else. So what were you hoping for, and what was kind of going through your head those final weeks before you got that plane?
So that is so funny to bring that up. I was so worried they were gonna fade me. There was a lot of jokes in the beginning that I was gonna like become an instructor. Like some of my favorite IPs would always be like, "We're gonna fade you like as a threat," and I was like, "Man, I gotta start saying my thoughts out loud." So I did, and by about halfway through, there was no more fade jokes for me. So shout out. And yeah, and I mean, there was some people in my flight that were just so good at flying, such good instructors. They were like cookie cutter faves. So I'm happy for them for swooping in and taking that role. But those weeks leading up to it, it's just hard. Like, you're being ranked in UPT, but I to this day, I don't know where I ended up. I don't know where I was throughout the program. I have no idea where I was ranked. So going into drop night, or when we figure out our aircraft, I was totally clueless on where I stood. And so the thing is, like, I keep mentioning this, desire to serve. I cared, but like, I wasn't so gung ho on any aircraft. I wasn't like, I need to fly the C-130 or anything like that. I was like, I'd be happy with pretty much being in the sky and like wearing the flag on my shoulder. And that's really all I care about. So, but I did end up putting C-17 as my first preference. And I started realizing like everyone else in my flight put that too. And like, that's how much of a team we were. We didn't even know what plane each other wanted to fly. Like, we didn't even talk about that because just like, we didn't want to have like any bias towards each other. And I just thought that was so funny because we ended up putting in our preferences and realizing this whole time we all wanted the C-17, the same plane, which is hilarious. And then drop night came around and literally we all got the C-17. Not everyone, but like, I think there was maybe 11 people in my flight at the end there, and like 7 of us got the C-17, and a couple of our guys got fighters, but I think everybody got what they wanted, which was so awesome. So yeah, I'm excited to go to Altus, Oklahoma for training with those same people that I just did UPT with. That's super exciting to get to stay with them and kind of just already know how we all like to study together and everything like that. Super excited to fly the plane. I don't know everything there is to know about it yet, but I'm about to start getting to work on that.
Wow, I'm glad that you get to take that group of friends, because it sounds like you guys really helped each other out along the way, and then you'll just push each other through Altus as well.
Yeah, I know it should be a good time. I'm excited.
Well, kind of moving on to some advice that you have for others. Are there any habits that you recommend building early for someone that's looking to set themselves up for success at IPT or UPT?
Yeah, this might be kind of like some niche advice here. I'm not sure. This is the advice I wish I got, but it's going to sound a little goofy, but I wish I started practicing in my day-to-day life preventing snowballing. I know that's like a big pilot word. I don't know if that's like a big normal word, but snowballing is like if you mess something up in the plane and then you just like let it get in your head and you keep messing stuff up and you end up like hooking the ride. I would literally, if I could go back to before I ever started flying, if I literally like my ice cream fell off my ice cream cone and splatted on the concrete, I would learn to just be like, whatever, that's cool. Here's a little debrief on myself on how to hold the cone better next time so it doesn't happen, and then move on. And I like, because you always tell yourself, oh, I'm not going to do that in a plane. Like, yeah, maybe I do that like in my day-to-day life, or like, I'm not going to do it on the check ride. Maybe I do it on my day-to-day rides, but I'm not going to do it on a check ride. Like, if you do it every day, you're going to do it on your check ride too. So it's like, I would just practice moving forward, regardless of what mistakes you make, understand why you made them, how to not make them again, and then just like immediately flip the switch and go back to doing your best and like moving with confidence. And maybe return back to that later to like think about it, debrief, with your instructor or however you're practicing this in life, but just try not to dwell on situations like that. I didn't realize how much of an impact that makes on flying, but it really does. And even the people in my flight who had like failed check rides and stuff, they always said, I just snowballed. Something happened, something small happened, and it just went downhill. And like even I experienced it. I was doing like a walk around on the aircraft just to make sure all the nuts and bolts are in place. And I forgot to check one spot, and I just totally snowballed and had like not the best ride on a check ride once. And man, if I could just go back and practice that mindset a little bit better, that's the advice I would give.
No,
That's good advice.
Yeah, I really love that, especially because you guys deal with so much feedback, like you said. And so you need to not, be in that mindset of dwelling on that. And I also think it's just good advice for anyone, because I know myself, I'll be thinking about something that I did 4 days ago and I'm still thinking about it.
I'm going to be so honest. I have never heard the term snowballing, but when you started describing it, I was like, is she describing womanhood? Like, I don't know, but I just feel like that's pretty applicable for all of us ladies out there. But I think that's so true. Like, control what you can control. Yeah. And I think as like such go-getters, it's really hard to do that too, because you want to control everything. But sometimes like life just isn't that deep. Or sometimes we just make it too deep, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think
it's like if you could control your mindset in the little moments, that's going to give you a leg up when it's a big, like, life-threatening moment to have that mindset practice, No,
totally agreed. Well, you given your advice, was there any best piece of advice that you received during training from a mentor or instructor?
I guess one that stands out to me is... It's funny. It's another like, something to practice every day sort of advice thing. But I was showing up, I was flying with like one of my favorite instructors, and I was just like, man, I'm nervous. And he's like, whoa, don't say that. I was like, what? I'm just feeling a little bit like nervous. I'm doing something new today. And he was like, don't ever say that out loud. And I was like, why not? And he's like, I just want you to start practicing this now, because one day like you are going to have a full crew on your plane, and like, people go to the airline, they have passengers. He was like, don't ever admit out loud if you are feeling nervous, because there's people looking at you or like looking to you for that like bit of confidence. And I was like, man, that's a good point. And he's like, you're speaking that into existence. Like try not to say that sort of thing. Like even if you're faking it till you make it show up, and be like, yeah, I'm ready. And so every time I flew with him, I'd show up and I'd be like, yeah, like I'm ready to do this, and we'd just have a much better flight. And I know it's kind of goofy, but I think it's just like showing up to life with a confidence, even if it's a little bit, like fake, like then trick your mind into that, right? Like don't sabotage yourself before you even get there, right?
Yeah, especially because you have had the training. Like you talked about the hours and hours and hours that you've studied and read and all of that. And I'm just thinking about how terrified I would be if my airline pilot showed up and was like, attention, today I am nervous. We will be taking off, but I am nervous to perform this flight.
Right.
I'd be like,
yeah. And like, obviously once people get to that level, there isn't any like nervousness, I imagine, but he was just like, practice that now. Like, don't tell yourself that you're nervous. Don't do that to yourself. I'm like, that's a good point. That was some good advice I got. And otherwise, just like keep moving forward. Take every day with a grain of salt, and just, even if you can only do the next hour of your life, then just do the next hour of your life and figure it out from there.
I need that advice.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, kind of moving on, after you're now done with UPT, moving on to the next best stuff, going to Altus, what are you most excited for as you kind of head into that next assignment, do that training in Altus, and then head off to whatever base that you may get?
Yeah, so I guess all of my flying so far has been kind of like single seat mentality, where it's almost like your instructor's just sitting in the plane grading you and trying not to speak at all. Like you could have a completely silent flight and not even like notice they're there. And I think part of the reason I chose the C-17 is because, well, I'm a level 10 yapper, first of all, but also I just like to be around people. And so I knew that I wanted a crew aircraft that I got to fly with other people with. And I'm so excited to be in a cockpit with multiple people that are like working together to make the mission happen. I am super, super excited to get to fly with other people. And hopefully I get to fly someday with some of these folks that I'm leaving UPT with. But otherwise, I'm excited to like get past this training phase and get out into the world and like actually start putting all this training to work and like actually doing a real, like Air Force mission where I feel like I'm having an impact in the world, you know what I mean?
Well, if you ever need an intel gal, you know who you can look up. Me
I'll
and
be
Issa
reaching
got
out.
your back.
I'll be reaching out. Don't worry.
Well, I
Well,
mean,
good.
after, you've spent time in Texas, now you're going to the great state of Oklahoma. Do you have a dream assignment base that you would like to have with the C-17 post that?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to put in my preferences here soon, and I'm definitely putting down Charleston and Hawaii. Those are two places that I would love to go. Hopefully, I'll get to hit both in my career at some point. I know Charleston is like a very fast paced, like heavy ops, like heavy workload type of base. So I wouldn't even mind that for like my first base just to get as much flying as a new pilot as possible. So kind of hoping for Charleston. Hawaii's cool though. I'll happily take that as my plan B or wherever I go, like I'll be happy wherever I go. I feel like it's more about, especially in the Air Force, it's more about the people than the location. So I'll be happy with anything. But that's the beauty of flying is you get to see a lot, go a lot of places regardless of where you're stationed.
Well,
True.
Allie and I will start manifesting Charleston or Hawaii for you.
Thanks guys, I need it.
We got you.
Well,
Well, that's kind of all that we have today. We hope that all of our listeners out there learn a lot about pilot training, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything that goes behind making really prepared Air Force pilots. And obviously, as you can see, you're in good hands. Allie's going to be up there flying the C-17, protecting all y'all. So we're glad that she was able to join us today. And we look forward to you guys tuning in for the next mini episode.
thank you for listening to the Bring Us Women podcast. That wraps up our mini episode on Air Force pilot training. We loved getting to sit down with our friend Allie and talk through what the journey really looks like, from the challenges and expectations to the moments that make it all worth it. Whether you're pursuing aviation, supporting someone who is, or just curious about the process, we hope this gave you a real and encouraging glimpse into the pilot training world. Let us know what other topics you want us to cover in future mini episodes. Whether it's career paths, training pipelines, military life, leadership, relationships, or the things people don't always talk about, send them our way. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Bring Us Women and wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on all things Bring Us Women. Until next time, be bold, keep leading, and we can't wait to bring you the next woman. The views expressed on this podcast are our own and do not constitute endorsement by the Department of War, the Department of the Air Force, or the U.S. government.